Joining us today, Dr. Justin Frank. He's the author of the bestseller, Bush on the Couch. It's a New York Times bestseller. He's also a clinical professor at the Department of Psychiatry at George Washington University's Medical Center. Dr. Frank, it's great to have you back on.
It's great to be back, Cenk.
Yes.
It's been too long.
Yes, very long. Now, last time it was Bush on the couch. Now I see that we've got our friend President Obama on the couch, and the new book, Inside the Mind of the President, Obama on the Couch.
Yep.
This is what we've been trying to figure out for 3 years now. What is going on inside that head? Okay, so in the words of my father, let me ask you, what is it?
What is it? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. That's why I wrote the book, because it was driving me crazy. And I'm a psychiatrist, shouldn't be driving me crazy. But I really wanted to know what happened, because when he writes about one America, and when he spoke, in 2004 about one America, it turns out there were two Obamas. There was candidate Obama and President Obama, and they're really different.
So you're seeing the same thing that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
And the audience is seeing.
Everyone.
Yeah, so the campaign was change and lovely and transparent and liberties are back, and then the results appear to be quite establishment. And I think that's the interesting part. He went from change to establishment. So why would he do that?
Well, first of all, I think the biggest problem is that we never figured out what he meant by change. Mm-hmm. Change, he became a projection screen where we could project all of our wishes, all of our dreams onto him, because he knew that anybody but Bush was going to win. This is the one chance a black man could become president, the one chance a woman could become president, in the recent future. So I think that what he meant by change is different from what we thought. Namely, he meant change into a new tone of civility and understanding and becoming a family, and being one America, rather than the change from Bush, the change from politics of greed, the change from wars and all of that into transparency. He really meant a change into civility, into talking and listening. And I don't think people understood that. And of course that didn't happen, because now people are more polarized than ever. But he essentially has always seen himself as a perspicacious person, both and. He can see all sides of an issue. He was always like that as a child, because he had to make do with having a fatherless home. Before we started tonight, you were talking about your dad. Clearly, he's an important figure for you in your life, and you reference him. He didn't have any of that. And
mm-hmm. So what does that lead to? In some folks it leads to many different things, sometimes abusive situations, etc. In this case, you got the whole spectrum. In this case, why does it lead him to want to constantly reach out?
Well, because he has wanted to reconstitute his own inner family, I think. And that's what he wants to do with America. He wants to reconstitute a family. He was afraid, he's very much, very sensitive to being abandoned, to being afraid of being abandoned. It wasn't just his father. His mother pulled him away from his stepfather in Indonesia when he was 10, and his mother herself went away for long trips into Indonesian villages, and he learned just to keep his mouth shut and put up with it. But he's always been afraid of being abandoned, so he selects in his private life a woman who's always going to put her children first, Michelle, and he decides as a father he's always going to put his children first. He's never going to do to them what was done to him, and Michelle will never do to his daughters what was done to him. And that's great. The problem is, what do you do with all these other feelings and all of this stuff? And he wants to make everybody into some kind of a family, and it's just not going to work, because you can't negotiate with people who are not interested in negotiating. All they're interested in is destroying you. And I don't think he understands that, because he never got in touch enough with his own rage and fury at his family. And you raised this question about fathers, and how people, in a fatherless home, they can become aggressive or abusive. I think you used that word. Mm-hmm. All kinds of things. You don't know what's going to happen. What you do know is that fathers help sons learn to manage their aggression in one way or another. They learn to help them stand up. They learn to keep their mouth shut. They help them learn to kind of when it's okay and when it isn't. They learn modulation of aggression. Without that, he grew up with what's called father hunger. and looking for a father.
What does that mean? I mean, he's not overly aggressive by any stretch of the imagination.
Except when he was campaigning, he was really tough on Hillary. He was really good against McCain. And my book, I was about to send my book into the publisher in May of this year because it was due, and he announces that he killed bin Laden. So I called the publisher up, Simon & Schuster. I said, hey, he just killed bin Laden. It's like I have to write a chapter about that. So I wrote another chapter. So he can be aggressive, he can be decisive, but only when everybody's on his side, everybody's going to agree with him. The problem is confrontation with other strong people. And he grew up with a myth. His mother told him that when he was all the time growing up, that his father, there's a mythical story that's in the book that's very important in Dreams from My Father. She told us a story when his father, Barack Sr., was in a bar. He was the only black face in an all-white bar in Honolulu. Some guy made a racial slur. Barack Sr. gets up and walks over to the guy, and instead, everybody's waiting for a big rumble or something, like in a Western. And instead of fighting with this guy, he launched into a long discussion and almost a treatise on racism and how it dehumanizes people and how it's really bad not just for the victim of racism, but for the person who is the racist, that they lose stature in their own minds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The guy was so moved and so convinced that he bought everybody a round of drinks after the thing was over. This is a myth, but what I'm saying is, and it was confirmed, Obama wrote that it was confirmed, so I think he believes in the power of words, and that if you really tell people and argue with them and discuss it, they'll agree with you. And that's crazy. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist. You can't, it happens at a bar. That's why he went out drinking with, Henry Louis, whatever his name, John, whatever his name, Gates, and that's why he played golf with Boehner. I mean, big deal.
Right. That's interesting. Look, I know we're all guessing. Your guess is more educated than mine. But as you were telling me that story, I thought one possibility is that the Republicans are the father figure that he's constantly reaching out to in the hopes that they will come back. Right? But they never come back, just like his father.
I think that's
and all it does is it leads them to reach out more and more.
Right. So he suffers from, I finally tried to figure out what it was, because he really wants everybody to be together. He does reach out to them. They're the father figure. And the irony is he trashes the people who supported him, the left. And that's his mother. His mother was he even called her the poster child for hippie causes and for liberal causes. And he was really mad at her. So every time the left is saying, keep your word, President Obama, you told us you were going to get rid of Guantanamo, he feels like it's his mother saying, do your homework. I mean, it's like he gets really mad and he thinks they're whining and complaining. And his mother is so powerful that it's back and forth. Sometimes he's the little boy and they're like his mother telling him to do his work. Other times he sees them as whining, like he did with the Congressional Black Caucus a couple weeks ago when he said, stop complaining. I mean, it was unbelievable to talk like that. So I think you're right. So what I finally figured out, and it was a diagnostic thing, that he suffers from obsessive bipartisan disorder.
Oh, that's fascinating. What's that?
He has to get along with people, and it does not matter. So even today and yesterday, when he has decided to take matters more into his own hands about Congress, and he talks about how Congress is so dysfunctional, that's not true. The Republicans are blocking everything in Congress. So even then, he can't just single out certain people who are destructive. He has to lump everybody together because it's the whole family. It's Congress as a group is dysfunctional. That's just not true.
It's interesting because to some degree, I'm a little skeptical about us, and obviously you're much more educated and you have the expertise on this, but judging it from an outside perspective, right? But at the same time, when we've had this conversation, it's beginning to take root in my head, this father-mother analogy, right? Because it's not that he's got to get along with everybody in the room. There's a little wrinkle to that, right? Because,
that's right.
Like, if he's in the room with a liberal, he doesn't mind, it's just saying absolutely not, being tough, etc. But maybe it was that he thought, if only my dad was around, he would see how unreasonable my mom is, or how much she expects too much from me, or whatever it is. If only he was around, things would be fine. I'm going to keep reaching out to him. Dreams of my father, right?
It's actually dreams from my father.
Dreams from my father. But if I'm in the room with my mom, I don't mind being tough on her.
except he never confronted her directly. He was tough on her when she would give him a hard time, but he never told her, like at one point he says to himself, or he writes it in his book, I wanted to tell her, Mom, your experiment failed, because this was during when he was in high school and he was drinking a lot and not studying. He said, and she got really mad at him because she came back from one of her things. But he never could confront her like that. He never could really talk to her. And the other thing you said, though, is really, I think, a very important thing, which is that it reminds me of why it's good to have two parents, if you can have them at all, which is it's really good to have one parent around to protect you from the other one. And they can take turns, but it's really important. It's a balance. And he had nobody to protect him from his mother.
So now let's turn to another side of this, right? Because I was at a dinner with Congressman John Conyers a number of months back, and he was the first guy to support President Obama, first guy literally to endorse him in Congress. And he was tremendously disappointed, and he's been public about that, right? And I said, what do you think it is? Right? And he said, well, look, I think that he thinks I'm a young guy here, and I've got to surround myself with the establishment, so I have that veneer of respectability, and that these guys know what they're doing. And I thought that rang true to me. Is there any psychological component to that?
Yeah, it's the same thing about looking for a father. He looks for somebody who's experienced and who's done it and who knows what to do. So it's part of the same process. The problem is, Larry Summers and Tim Geithner are not the best fathers you could pick. And they already drove us into the ditch in the first place. So I don't think he's very good as a judge of character. The only person who was ever really functioned as a father for him in his adult life was Reverend Wright, who he adored and who was great. In fact, the Audacity of Hope in his second book is based on a sermon from Reverend Wright, which was called Audacity of Hope. He was devoted until whoever found a way to trash him trashed him.
Right. That's interesting.
And Conyers is not exactly a guy who stood up. He was opposed to impeaching Bush, or I remember that during. He was opposed to really.
But I thought he was one of the few that explored. President Obama was definitely opposed to it.
Totally, but so was Conyers before Obama came in. I remember him, going along with Pelosi. I thought he was going to split with Pelosi when she said impeachment's off the table.
Right, but no one did. No, almost no one split up. Right. So now the other thing is you mentioned specific policies here. So real quick, how does his handling of the Gulf oil spill or the Middle East strategies, et cetera, relate to what drives him psychologically?
Again, he is looking for consensus. He's looking to belong. He also wrote that the only thing he's ever been afraid of is of not belonging to a group. Even walking in the projects in Chicago late at night, which were pretty dangerous, he said the only thing he was afraid of when he would walk there was that he never thought about being afraid of being hurt. He was afraid of not belonging to a group. I think that I think there's a big chapter in the book about his stepfather, Lolo, who was a very important person and the only real father figure he had. He spent a lot of time with Lolo, who had been a revolutionary against Sukarno, went back to Indonesia. The mother married Lolo and took Barry, who was called Barry then, back with her. He was 6. Lolo changed during the year he had been away in Indonesia, probably because he was quite beaten by Sukarno people. But he ended up working for oil companies, Lolo. And the mother trashed her new husband because he was working for oil companies. And then the mother pulls Barry away from Lolo, who was the one person who really taught him how to box. He taught him what it's like to be a man. You never complain if you're hurt. He taught him all kinds of things. And the mother pulled him away from, I don't want to turn the mother into a villain, but she really did pull him away from Lolo when he was 10. I think that some of his anger at her unconsciously gets expressed in his comfort with being friends with the oil company. I mean, I really think that he's identified a little bit more with Lolo than anybody would like.
That's interesting. One last thought on that, by the way, is that
he never confronted them, the BP.
Right. Well, that's certainly true. The results are indisputable. By the way, did you get grief sometimes from other psychiatrists for analyzing from
all the time
from outside?
A lot of psychiatrists say they wish that when I did Bush, a lot of people said we wish we had guts to do what you did, and one guy said thank you for being cannon fodder for the rest of us. But with Obama, I've been getting a different kind of grief because for me, psychoanalysis, the purpose of it is not a weapon, it's to help us understand more. You know, like you were saying in the beginning, people don't get it about him in 3 years. And I had the same reactions to him as you did. We're on the same page about not getting who is this guy, and that's why I wanted to write the book. But I got a lot of grief from people who were afraid that I was going to trash Obama the way I was so critical of Bush. So a lot of friends were very reluctant to, you know, support the book or anything. But from psychiatrists in general, psychoanalysts, they're not giving me much trouble right now because there's a long tradition of applied psychoanalysis. Everybody knows about Abraham Lincoln was depressed. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge we have about things.
That makes sense. And to your point about, by the way, the Democrats being the mother figure and the Republicans being the father figure, Professor Lakoff writes about that often, that's the two camps that they fall in. So it goes along with your theory here. So the book is called Inside the Mind of the President, Obama on the Couch. It's by Dr. Justin Frank. And real quick, you have book signings coming up, right?
I have some book signings coming up. The biggest one is going to be in Washington, D.C. on Saturday night at Politics and Prose, which is a very big independent bookstore, and everybody's welcome. It should be great. And I've had a couple in L.A. already, and I don't think there's one in La Jolla on Thursday night.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us again, Dr. Frank.
Okay, pleasure.
Young Turks.